Listen to The Vibes, hosted by Coyote Night. Listen in for some positivity and good times. The views and opinions of our guests may not necessarily reflect those of the host or the Vibes Broadcast Network. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome, everyone, to Listen to the Vibes. I have here Mr. Zach Kouloughli. Did I say that right?
Ooh, you did very well.
Yes, I am on a roll. I have been getting the hardest names lately. I got Jerkowitz the other day. Jerkowitz. And, you know, trying to keep up with all these names. I'm going to be an expert before this is done.
I'll put you in 1 percentile.
I got you. So tell us about you, where you were born and raised and how you got to Pflugerville, Texas.
Yes, I was born in Algeria in a city called Oran. And I just find out lately there's a city, I think, in Missouri called Oran. So that's kind of interesting. Probably tell you a little bit about Algeria. Probably you've heard there is a couple of town in the United States. One is called Santa Monica, Florida, in California, and St. Augustine. So St. Augustine and Santa Monica were born in Algeria. So let's give you a little bit of a history for those who don't know where Algeria is. It's in North Africa. It's next to Morocco.
Oh, wow.
It's the Mediterranean Sea. I grew up in that country until the age of 23, where I graduated with a degree in mechanical engineering, and where I thought the path were laid out to me to go pursue my education in material science in Paris. I saw it as the hand of God that moved me into the United States. So in September of 1994, I landed in Houston, Texas.
I'm sorry.
But I just stayed there for a couple of hours, layover, I guess. And then from there, flew to Dallas. And from Dallas, I flew to Austin. And I've been in Austin since.
Wow.
Yeah, I learned English. I've attended the University of Texas for a semester, and then I enrolled at St. Edward's University, where I earned a degree in a master's in business administration, and joined corporate America. Worked as an engineer until I guess a few years back. I had this. I'm not sure. I don't want to call it like epiphany or something, but I lost two of my dear friends to pancreatic cancer. And my head went, there should be an answer out there. There is no way that there is no answer for this disease. So that kind of encouraged me to pursue different modalities. I enrolled in a doctorate program for naturopathic medicine. And while and to tell you the truth, I was getting bored in that program. I'm an engineer. I function like an engineer. I studied a lot of math, so I tend to recognize things in terms of mathematical equations. And the program was kind of a little bit boring, kind of like learning about herbs and name them and what they're for and stuff. But to me, it was not very palpable. I could not touch. I could not measure. So toward the end of the program, it was probably the last class before we did, I guess, some sort of thesis and residency. A modality called the Reims Biological Theory of Ionization. Oh man, it was all math and it was all measurable. And kind of wondered how come this is not mainstream. So I digged a little bit further. I knew there was some interest group that I made sure that it would stay in the shadow. So after I graduated, I decided I looked for the people who were specialized in that modality and paid them privately to teach me that modality. So, and now I consider myself not so much an expert, but I consider myself a student, an avid student of the Reims Biological Theory of Ionization.
Okay.
And yeah, this is, I do practice a little bit. Any person that I see, I have to test. I don't make any sort of evaluation without testing someone fluids. And the beauty of this modality is that it is non-invasive. All the samples you need is saliva and urine, and voila.
Okay, and so what exactly does this device do?
What does again? What was that again?
The device that you're working on, what exactly does it do?
Oh, yes. The device I'm currently working on is to track early markers for cardiovascular disease and early markers for a heart attack and early markers for a heart arrest. And I'm not sure whether you, do you know what is the difference between a heart attack and a cardiac arrest or heart arrest?
No.
Yeah.
Please.
Because I remember a person earlier asked me this question, and I'll be happy to answer that. So usually a heart attack occurs when in relations to cholesterol. Let's say you're having, let's say, plaques building up in the arteries and veins and causing all sort of issues, and at some point the person has a heart attack. Whereas cardiac arrest is like, think of it as, you know, you are running, and at some point you are tired and you decide to rest. So there is some byproduct waste in the heart. A normal heart, or a heart is not sick, it will just like, you can barely hear it. But when someone's heart is heavy in urea, it's just like, doop, doop, doop. And just think of it, you have a heart beating that hard against a membrane that has hardened, and what happens is just cracks. And at some point the heart just is tired because there's so much energy that it exerts to beat. So let's say it's using 1 unit of energy when it's healthy, and all of a sudden it's using 5 units of energy. At some point it's just going to get tired and it stops. So that's a cardiac arrest. That's a kind of a simple way to illustrate it.
Okay.
What I found, the difference between current modalities, let's say allopathic medicine, which is traditional medicine, and what I practice, is the markers are not the same. So to give you an example, and this kind of hit me a couple of days ago, you probably heard of famous Jeopardy anchor Alex Trebek.
Yes.
He passed away a couple of days ago. It was a favorite of mine. And I was reading the comment, and it says he was diagnosed in whatever it is, last year, March of last year, he was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. So it's interesting, especially in pancreatic cancer, and for the 2 friends that I lost, they've been also diagnosed stage 4 pancreatic cancer. So how come we don't diagnose someone is not diagnosed when they're stage 1 or 2? Because there are some diseases that give no warnings, or the warnings are not, I don't want to say aggressive, but they're not grave enough to where it makes you think, well, maybe I need to see a doctor. So probably it was just a like subtle stomach ache, like every once in a while you have like a stomach ache or a pain around the abdomen, and you think, oh, it may be just whatever, something I ate last night that caused me whatever it is I feel. So whereas the methodology that I practice, I detect anything that goes wrong inside the body. Meaning, I know what it is, the equation of perfect health, and we come to that a little bit later. So for me, let's say you eat something that your body does not adapt very well. It causes a loss of energy. I measure that loss of energy. I can see it. So for me, that instant you had loss of energy, even though probably you had no symptom at all, for me, that's your first day of sickness, whether you have symptoms or not. So maybe a day or two, you come out of that situation and you're back to functioning normal. Let's say you're back to functioning 100%. So that you made that correction. But let's say you did not make that correction. Let's say the next day you took the same food, and the following day you took the same food again, and a few days after that you kept on taking the same food. That caused you a loss of energy. That creates a pattern, and that a pattern over an extended period of time creates disease. So basically, this is what's disease. It's a loss of energy over an extended period of time.
I did not think of it like that.
When I studied this science, I literally had to reformat everything that I knew about everything. And I had to make my peace with it. And I will tell you how I made my peace with it. When I was in the program, and we were supposed to find clients that would be willing to get tested, and we had to report on their health. So I went to the 24 Fitness, what I had a membership. Now that 24 Fitness, I guess went out of business, was purchased by another company. But I saw a buddy of mine hanging out in a jacuzzi, and for the first time, I said, "How you doing, John?" And he said, not so good. For the first time, he spoke to me about his family life and how his wife was not doing well. Mm-hmm. And I said, "Look, John, I'm involved in this program, and we're looking for a potential patient. Would you agree if I tested her and I could tell you basically what's wrong with her and so on?" And yeah, he said yes, because I've seen all sort of doctors and no one could help me. So great. So I set an appointment. I remember it was a Sunday. Went to his place. I said, "No cost of yours, as long as you agree. It's going to be my paperwork." He said, "Fine, great." So I tested her. All I needed, her sample of urine, saliva, her age, height, and weight, and gender. That's all pretty much I needed. So I tested her. I had, at that time, I didn't know as much as I knew today, but I was able to highlight few things. Well, when you highlight few things, and especially it's like diet related, and we come from a lifetime where we believe that disease comes from somewhere, not from within, from somewhere, we have a hard time accepting that. So anyways, he said, "Okay, well, thank you." And as I was about to leave, I said, "John, what about if I test you?" And he said, he was reluctant. He said, "Nah," I said, "I'm fine." He was a former veteran. And he said, "I have good healthcare, I have good doctors. I think I'm fine, I'm all covered." I said, "Look, John, it's just going to make it easy for me. It's going to be a second patient for me, and I don't have to go fish for a new patient. And it's in my modality. So I'm just trying to sell my modalities. And my modality is different. We don't test the same way." And he said, "Oh, great." And he was kind of reluctant. Then he said, "Okay, fine, let's do it." I said, "All I need is a sample of urine, saliva, and that's it." So I get the sample, and I test the sample, and I'm in shock. And I look at him and said, "John, are you okay?" And he was in shock. He said, "What do you see? What did you see?" He said, "You've seen me at the gym." He said, I ran like 3 miles. I don't remember that, 3 or 5 miles. But he was, I would say, for his age, he was 61 or 62. He was a performer. He performed quite well. And I said, "Look, don't worry," but I was trained to trust the numbers. And the numbers are telling me there are some things cooking inside of your body. I did not worry him a lot. He said, "What do you see?" Well, I was trying to find a kind of a diplomatic way to tell him that your heart is under a lot of stress. But I just told him, "Well, I see your sugar is a little bit high, your salt is a little bit high, and there's a little bit of a stress on your heart." And he said, "Well," I said, and he was really taken aback. He didn't like what I said. So he said, like, "What, you've seen me at a gym?" And I said, "Well," I said, "Well, whatever." And I said, "You know what, if you heed my advice, just go check with your doctor and just come to my place. I had another tool. I said, let me just make sure you're, I was supposed to do an iridology test to kind of see where your cholesterol level is at, and that kind of thing. So the next day he came to my place. I did the iridology test, even though it was kind of, I didn't need that test anyways. But 3 days later, he called me and he said, Zach, you're right. I saw a doctor and he said my blood sugar was on the high side. And he said I had to take it a little bit easy on the sugar. And I said, that's pretty much it? He said, that's it, pretty much it. I said, are you sure? So he didn't forget anything. He said, no. I said, John, I did not mean specifically it was a sugar. There was quite a bit of stress on your heart. And I'm not sure whether he didn't take it seriously. So I said, okay, well, thank you for the advice. And that's it. That was late April of 2018. Early July of that same year, 2018, it was about like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. I was going to sleep, and I received a text message. Bang! It says, Zach, the tests were right. You were right. I just had a heart attack. Doctors say my heart is functioning at 20%.
Oh, wow.
It was like, for me, at that time, I was still digesting the modality. I was studying it. I don't think I fathomed the importance of it, but that was like a big hammer that hit me in the head. It was like a wake up call. I need to take it seriously and delve into it really deep. So,
well, I mean, most of us, like myself included, when I was younger, I didn't think about such things. And you're kind of taught, at least us guys, when you're, from your little on up, that, I'll just suck it up if you don't feel good or you're hurting or whatever. Just suck it up. You can take it. I was telling you before we started the show, when I was 36, I ended up in the hospital because of my heart. And I didn't know I was diabetic either, but I ate fried foods all the time. I drank way too much, and I just didn't take care of myself. And when I ended up in the hospital, my triglycerides were over 1,500. My blood sugar was over 600. My cholesterol was off the charts. My blood pressure was off the charts. And I had all these problems. It seemed like everything went downhill from there, but I also lost about 70 pounds because I wanted to get better. And although I'm doing a lot better, I'm having other problems. So I was telling you, my spine is deteriorating, and they have to go in and put some plates and a cage and stuff just to relieve that pressure off my nerves. It's not going to say everything's going to be perfect, but it should get better. So your device, it would benefit somebody like me, and I wished I had known about that back then in the 90s. Maybe I wouldn't have gotten as far as I did. I have a pill regimen that would choke an elephant. So
well, I don't want my device to sound like something I invented or unique. My device will be a consolidation of 5 or 6 instruments that are very basic. Probably the whole thing now you can buy for a couple of $100. You can have all these instruments. Depends on how much you want. You can go from $200 to $2,000 depending on the quality. But some more or less they will do the job. But back to the difference between this modality and what is practiced nowadays is that the markers are not the same. Sometimes I find it quite interesting that people who graduate, let's say with a degree, the same as degree as mine, of a naturopathic medicine. So when you go, before you do a checkup, they tell you, go to a lab, get me these tests and come back and see me. Well, you're not changing anything. The markers are the same. The only difference is that instead of giving you Lipitor or some other pharmaceutical drug, just giving you something that historically has been working, it doesn't mean it's bad, but they're just giving you something that's natural, which is great. But they are not able to detect early markers of, just like we talked about, pancreatic cancer always being diagnosed stage 4. I'm trying to think of something, breast cancer, uterus cancer, renal cancer. I mean, these diseases have a tendency to be diagnosed, brain cancer. So this methodology gives someone the opportunity for the health conscious, because if you care less, and it's not going to make any difference. And what I found in my practice, that the biggest challenge is not so much tell someone what they have, what they don't have, is just put them on the program and tell them to stick to it. Give you a piece of history from my own experience. 3 years ago, I was on the verge of having a stroke and I did not know it. Right. And I thought I was eating healthy. Why I thought I was eating healthy? Because I would go to Costco and anything that says it's good for your heart, it has omega-3 and omega-6. If it's a nut product, a chocolate product that has nuts, omega-3, whatever, then I would buy it. And I was thinking that was the way to go. And I was getting tired, and it really caused me, big family life. My wife didn't like it. She will, every time she comes home, I'm laying down in the couch, not being able to move. And she thought I was in a lazy mode, and I just couldn't do much. And it was just, my heart was getting tired. And I went to do my physical, and my traditional doctor, I don't know whether they take physical exams seriously or not, to be honest with you. But he said, you're fine, you're good to go, see you next year, Zach. It was Dr. Esso for the past years. So, somebody I trusted, until a day happened, I'm about to go to sleep. And I feel the weirdest thing that ever happened to me in my life. Probably the closest thing I can describe it, it probably would not be an accurate description. It's like somebody ran a battery through my veins, and I feel like electricity is running through my veins. Oh, okay, wow. So this kind of feeling that I had. So, but it was also a feeling of death, because I never made a comment of this nature to my wife, but I'm looking at her in the eyes, and I said, sweetie, I think I'm a goner. Today is my last. And, she freaks out. And I was like, I don't feel, it's like a low blood pressure or anything. I said, look, if I survive tonight, I think I know who to call. So I went online the next day. I went online and I found someone in West Virginia. Doctor, he just passed away this year. Luckily, unfortunately, he was someone who has become my associate, because I trained with him afterwards, and he became my associate in the business. Mm-hmm. So this is true experience, someone I never met before. And I said, doctor, I had the weirdest experience in my life, and I thought I was dying. And before I went further, he said, Zach, he said, you're into the RBTS? That's how we call this methodology. He said, yes. He said, do you have your numbers? And I said, yes. He said, could you please read them to me? It's just 7 numbers plus gender, age, height, and weight. He listened to me. He said, okay, let me tell you your symptoms. And he started listing off symptoms one by one, as if the guy was my personal doctor. Wow. And I said, how do you know of this? How do you know this? And then he said, let me ask you 3 questions. He said, all you answer is just yes or no. He said, have you been eating nuts lately? I said, yes. I said, what this has to do with what I have? He said, next question. Have you been drinking tea? I said, yeah, I love tea. I've been drinking tea since I was 12. And I said, like tea, I mean, heavy tea, heavy drinker, like like a heavy dosage of tea. It's not like and third question, he said, have you been eating chocolate? I said, yeah, but what this has to do with what I have? So chocolate is anti-cancerogenic, and nuts has all the fatty acid you need, blah, blah, blah. And he started laughing on the phone. He said, who told you that? Well, I said, science, the research. And he started laughing. And he said, what? He said, well, you tell me how. He said, well, if they're good for you, how did I find out your diet? Because that's all he asked me, these three questions. And I said, well, how do you find that out? He said, it's all in your pattern. So think of it this way. Everything we need, you think, everything we eat, you think it's kind of vanishes. No, it leaves a trail. It's a pattern. So you think of it as a star constellation. Mm. So this year, or I don't understand astronomy much, so I don't know, maybe this year is this constellation, next year is the other constellation. I don't know whether it goes by week or day, I don't know. So he says, it's in your diet. He said, I can see it in the pattern. So, I mean, that was really hard for me to digest, because that was the first time I hear something like that. But from someone who comes from a mathematical background, let's say, you see, if we're talking to someone who had a background in mathematics, and I tell him x squared plus y squared equals r squared, what is it? Well, he said, simple. It's the equation of a circle. And if I say, okay, y equals x plus b, I said, well, it's simple. It's an equation of a straight line. So just by the equation, you know what it is. Mm-hmm. So for him, it was the same thing. I read the numbers, and he recognized the pattern, and he saw the pattern. But guess what? He did not tell me what I was going through, but because his job was not to make you worry. And I said, Doc, what do I have? He said, well, legally, it depends on which state you're in. In Texas, we're not supposed to diagnose. I mean, when I test someone, let's say I find out they have cancer, I don't tell them they have cancer. So I was in Texas. He was in West Virginia. I think it was in the same thing. So he was by law, I think he was supposed to diagnose. But he said, has anybody cured any disease by naming the disease? I said, no. He said, what other question you have for me? And I was like freaking out, because I thought I was dying. And I said, what do I need to do to recover my health? He said, are you ready? And he started. And I'm telling you, when he started, and it was just a diet program. And I said, well, how long do I have to do this? So my thought went, because I'm thinking in terms of allopathic medicine, you take a pill a few days a week, and voila, after 10 days, you're fine. He said, well, considering your age, you're looking at 4 to 5 years if you're following everything by the book. Mm-hmm. I'm like, Doc, you're kidding me. He said, no. He said, you have a choice. He said, you can go see a doctor. He said, apparently he did not figure out what's wrong with you. And he said, you want to go natural way, the natural path? He said, there's no miracle. He said, it takes us 6 months. So he started teaching me about cells. And he said, well, even though I studied all that stuff, but it did not register up here, because he said, we change cells every 6 months. He said, the cells you have right now, they're not healthy cells. But he says, the next cell you are building is not going to be 100% cell. So let's assume you have a 30% energy. He said, your cell has 30% energy. He said, your next cell is going to have 50% energy. He said, don't bet it's going to have 100% energy. He said, the following cells is going to have 65% energy, and so on. He said, so that's why I'm saying it's going to take you, but it doesn't mean you're going to be up and running in 4 to 5 years. For me, I followed that program, but I didn't tell. I mean, I was cheating. I did not follow it religiously, but in a lapse of 3 months, man, I was back to the gym. I was feeling better. I was doing my walks. I was fine and back to normal. So what was normal for me was I was sick, but I thought that was normal for me. So back to allopathic, to what we do. For us, we can recognize when the body is not operating between 85 to 100%. Current markers of traditional medicine, even though, I mean, there's a lot of advantages, but symptoms start to appear when the cell has lost over 50% of its reserve energy. So that's why we don't track something early on in the process, because your nerves are degenerating faster, and therefore, let's say you don't feel a symptom because the nerves that detects the pain, they carry the pain to the brain, are not there. And once the disease hit, let's say, the big wall, stage 4, then it's too late to do anything.
Yeah, I wish that I had known, a lot more than what I did at the time, ahead of time, because I was, like you said, feeling tired. I was working from 3 in the afternoon till about 11 o'clock at night. And that was, the average time. And so I would come home, probably go to bed around 2 o'clock in the morning, and then I'd sleep in and then, get up and start my day. But it just seemed like I got more and more tired. And I said, well, you know what? I guess I'm just being lazy. I'm going to get up early. I'm going to do some work around the house, and maybe that'll get my energy going. I got up. I worked around the house for a couple of hours. And the next thing you know, I lay back down. I slept until it was time to get up and go to work. I'm on my way to work, and I've got this kind of hazy feeling, almost like a drug-induced haze or something. And I just thought maybe I hadn't woke up all the way yet. But I got to work. I went to my boss's office to get my assignments for the evening. And I just remember looking at him and saying, man, I don't feel good, but I didn't want to lose my overtime. So I was going to stick it out. And then the next thing I know, it's almost like walking into a tunnel where everything's just kind of going dark around me. And my heart was like thumping really, really hard, and I couldn't catch my breath. My boss is in my face. He's screaming at me, but I swear it sounds like he's down the hallway, even though he's right in my ear. And I couldn't answer him. They said my eyes rolled back in my head, and luckily the ambulance service was right next door, so they got to me real quick. But you think one way instead of going and find out what the problem is. I try to stress to people, because I was a supervisor for years and years and years, and I can tell you, I got a little bitty tiny cut on my hand. And you think, oh, just a little cut, nothing. I'll just wipe it off, go on, and I'll put a Band-Aid on it later or something. Which is exactly what I did. I mean, I finished my work, washed my hands, went home, put a little ointment and a Band-Aid on it. It was like, it's just a little nick, ain't nothing. Woke up in the middle of the night, sweating profusely, couldn't close my hand because it had swollen so bad. My whole arm was aching, and that little bitty tiny cut put me in the hospital. So I tell people, you need to pay attention to what your body's trying to tell you. Even the smallest little thing, go get it checked out, because you never know. Yeah. You just never know.
Yes.
So, and you say your device, along with the other ones, you just urine and a saliva sample, and you can detect all kinds of different things?
Yes. Basically, what we do, we don't look for disease. I guess the name of the disease it's a proprietary names by the American Medical Association. So any disease that we mentioned that comes from the allopathic world. Mm-hmm. So for us, if you had one disease or the other, it's irrelevant for me. My challenge for someone like myself is how to help someone from having this anomaly to functioning and start restoring health, because we can restore health. And like what you've heard, that, oh, there are some diseases are incurable or you cannot restore health. Up to a point, I would agree, but most of us can restore health. Restoring health, it's not mainstream. So all we hear about, oh, it's a chronic disease, it's an incurable disease, it's a genetic disease, and therefore in our mind it registers that that it's something we can do about it. So how come there are some people in their 80s and 90s that don't have arthritis, whereas let's say I'm talking to my mom or something, and she says, "Oh, you have a little bit of arthritis. Hey, that's okay. It's part of aging." No, it's not part of aging. I'm sorry. It's a part of not taking care of someone's body, and part of the markers we're using nowadays, what we consider something normal, which is not normal, because the let's say the interval is, let's say, just for sake of camera, it's this big. Mm-hmm. So let's say for someone's to consider it healthy, let's say the interval is, whereas the interval should be, for example, here, which means if you deviate just a little bit on this side or on this side, it should raise a flag. Well, now your body is producing more cholesterol than normal, but we don't track the amount of cholesterol that's being secreted from the liver, but we track plaque, which is the byproduct. You see?
Right.
So, but plaque happens over a period of time. So someone doesn't develop cholesterol, cholesterol doesn't build up overnight. It builds up over a period of 5 years or 10 years, and then you go see a doctor, and all of a sudden it hits the marker that he has in his chart, and so okay, yeah, your cholesterol is a little bit higher.
Right.
Whereas you've been having that for the past 5 or 10 years.
Yeah,
so this is what I do basically.
Yeah, there's no telling what all damage I did to myself, because I was eating fried chicken and greasy tacos all the time, and it was nothing for me to sit down and drink a case of beer in one day, And so
I would say it's part of it, but I don't want to blame it. It's like a lot of us would like to blame it on a burgers, on a fried chicken or something. The diet has to be rich, okay? So I come from a school of thought to where I don't tell people don't eat this or that, but I would tell them do everything in moderation. And if, let's say, you want to stay healthy, don't duplicate your food. So don't eat the same burger 5 days in a row, because your diet, for me, even though you may be wealthy, you may have the greatest burger, but when I look at your diet, I will write poor diet, because for me, it's not rich. You don't have a variety of nutrients. Mm-hmm. So and what is disease? Disease is nothing more than a mineral deficiency. That's also a concept that really hit me in the head. But it's not so much alien to us when you think of it. Let's say you have a little bit of interest in agronomy or soil science. You know that when a plant, let's say, is turning brown or is curling or something, you see an expert who tells you, well, it needs a little bit of copper. It needs a little bit of this or a little bit of that. So how come it works? We accept it when it comes to plant, but we don't accept it when it comes to humans.
Right. I totally get that. Yeah, I see what you're talking about. Well, I mean, once again, it was cheap to go to Church's Chicken every night, because 99 cents you get 2 pieces of chicken and a biscuit, Yeah. So 4 or 5 days a week, I'm spending a couple of bucks to get me, a Coke and a couple pieces of chicken. And then I'd get a bag of Doritos, one of the big bags. I sit there and I could put a whole bag away. It was nothing for me to do, do something like that. And I wasn't getting the exercise that I needed. I thought, oh man, I'm working all these hours. That ought to be good enough. Well, it's really not. I needed to move more. And sure enough, it built up, boom.
Yeah.
And look what happened. And, who knows how long I'd been doing that caused that to happen. And I had to learn how to eat right again and get, like you said, a variety. I eat more poultry and fish. I still have my red meat, but I try not to eat as much.
Well, let me tell you something interesting. I will surprise you.
Mm-hmm.
We have a tendency to, and I've said that, I've heard that and read that. I'm not so convinced. A lot of people will tell you, oh, excess red meat causes cancer. I don't think red meat causes that. It could be a variety of things.
Right.
Again, that I have to check who's sponsoring that research. Honestly, I would put chicken and red meat in the same boat. So if you're eating excessive protein, you're eating excessive protein. If your body is not digesting protein, it's not digesting protein. It's not like it will let go. Okay, I will let go of the chicken protein. They are good proteins, but the red meat proteins, they're not good proteins. So no, it doesn't work like that. And even I'll tell you something. I'll surprise you with something. Even people who go vegetarian, they're not your healthiest people. Sometimes we tend to think, oh, go vegetarian. Well, it may work for some, but for most of them, and I can see that when they come to see me and what they go through. So it has nothing to do. So the diet has to be rich. There are some food that do affect, and we can talk about them later. But we did mention that chocolate supposed to be. There was a research paper that was published some years ago that should be against cancer. Mm-hmm. It's not. Nuts. We think of nuts as healthy stuff, and luckily for us, what's his name, Stephen Gundry, came up with his book. Forgot the name of it. Very, very powerful book, and he talks specifically about nuts, and he said how unhealthy they are, specifically peanuts.
Really?
Yes, and if you want to have favorite. Yes, you want to make it's okay. You want to eat peanuts, but make sure you boil them. You have to take them through another process. Oh man! But if you enjoy the taste, boil them and enjoy them because in the long run they're gonna hurt you. I mean, unless you have a little bit once in a blue moon, that's okay. But if you are used to eating nuts in general and peanuts in particular, you have to watch out for that.
Well, see, look, the best diet in the whole world, and you can't deny it, is Whataburger. That's all you need. You don't need nothing else.
I'm not a big fan. I probably had it twice or three times.
Oh, come on now. You can't live in Texas and not love Whataburger.
I mean, that's what my kids tell me.
Jalapeno cheddar biscuit. What's that?
So my kids do cheat when I'm not around.
See, I'm saying a jalapeno cheddar biscuit with sausage and cheese for breakfast. A nice double meat and cheese Whataburger for lunch. And, go crazy for supper. So I should get paid as much as I mention Whataburger on my show.
Maybe he should write you in his will.
Right. Well, I will say once I started losing weight, I started feeling a lot better.
Yep. Yes, sir.
70 pounds. I mean, I went from about a size 40 down to a 32 waist. Yeah. And unfortunately, and I don't know what's causing it. Maybe I need to go get tested, but I'm getting arthritis all through my body. I can't even hardly lift my arm anymore because it's so bad. And I got
Okay.
it in my spine, my knees. I mean, I'm falling
Let
apart,
me ask you
man.
a question. Maybe it will help to give you a clue. Do you drink? Do you drink water?
Yes, I do.
Um, because the source for arthritis is when we have an accumulation of salt in the body. So that excess salt in the body tend to cause our chemistry to change. I don't want to talk about a science to where you start having deposits in the joints,
Yeah.
and so you can fix that by drinking. I don't want to say you have to drink a lot of water, but drink a little bit of water more frequently. So instead, let's say you're drinking, let's say, a bottle at lunch and a bottle at dinner, I would probably go a cup at breakfast, and a couple hours drink a cup, a couple hours later I drink a cup. So that it will help the body flush the excess salt, excess weight that you have. That's one way to go. It will help a little bit.
Yeah. And, the thing is I try to watch my salt intake.
Uh-huh.
And so I try to stay away. In fact, I don't really salt my food. I don't know if pepper's any better, but I do use a lot of pepper, but I don't put a lot of salt on my food. I've kind of gotten used to that bland taste. You know, like if I eat peanuts, they're unsalted. Every once in a while I might have some fries, but I always order my fries with no salt.
Okay.
You know, things like that. I don't eat fries that often, but you know, I don't eat chips. I've eliminated a lot of that stuff out of my diet. I try to find alternative things to season my food with, like garlic and things like that. So I don't know. Maybe my body still retains the salt quite a bit.
Well,
I don't know.
Well, I mean, don't think of it as something that happened overnight. It's probably the accumulation of what you have gone through in the past.
True.
And it's
True.
just showing, as you know, as we age, things catch up with us.
This is true.
So don't expect it to go away like overnight, but just make it a practice and see what it does to your body. One thing I would like to emphasize is if you're ever taking salt, make sure you're not taking sea salt.
Sea salt.
That's another salt they told us it's healthy. It's not healthy, brother. That the salt contains a lot of salt in it. It's heavily concentrated. A lot of people think of it as, oh, it's a good source of minerals. We're supposed to have our minerals from fruit and vegetables. We're not supposed to have minerals either from water or from salt. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. If there is any food, and probably I will hurt your feelings right now, if there is any food I would tell you to stay away from, is pork, in whichever shape it comes, bacon, briskets, whatever. And pork has a tendency to affect energy more than any other food. So there are other food that contribute to our poor health. But if you are having certain symptoms, I would say the number one food, try to cut. It's pork. Try to replace your pork with other red meat or chicken or fish or whatever, but I'm pretty sure you'll be fine without eating pork. So
my answer to that is, I guess I'm just gonna die.
No, well, eventually we all do, but here's the thing: eventually we all do. But
right.
Do you want to just expire just like that? Boom, you go, or do you want to carry a disease for 5 years or 10 years and go through a health management program for a couple of years, and so it's something to think about, because you don't want to you become a liability for loved ones, or
that's true. That's the one thing I think it worries me the most, is being a burden on my family. Is I've told my wife, you know, hey, if I get really, really sick, I don't want y'all to have to go through that. And she's like, no, I'm going to be there with you to the end, but I don't want it to have to come to that. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna have to cut out my.
But I tell you, Kyle,
Mhm.
it was even hard for me. The hardest thing that I had to do was to change my diet. I mean, when you come from a lifetime, for me, McDonald's French fries are the greatest French fries in history of mankind.
I will agree with that.
So, and having to change my diet and not take French fries, now I probably have those French fries maybe once every 3 months or 4 months, something like that. I don't want to live a life like I have to, okay, I can't have this, I don't like the canned thing. So I would like to have things in moderation. So, but the key is to replace. See, if I tell you don't eat pork, it doesn't sound good. But if I tell you, what about if you eat more of fish or more of that, then it will at least cushion the sound of, or the negative sound of don't eat.
Hey, I can live off from some catfish. I'll tell you that right now. Might be hard. The bacon, it's difficult, but I could give up the bacon.
No.
The sausage, I'll do that every once in a while. But I'll admit, like carnitas and things like that, I'll eat a lot of pork that way. I'll just have to change that up. I mean, there's so many things I could do a lot better, but I'm one of these. I have given up a lot and changed the way that I eat and how I look at food now. It's very difficult to say, okay, now I got to give up something else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I gave up the beer, the whiskey, all the fried foods and all that stuff. But I will treat myself to, like I say, some fries or something every once in the blue moon. Because I'm sorry, you just, to me, you just got to have something like that every once in a while. But in moderation, like you said, moderation. Not like I used to, where I'd eat fried foods every day. So if somebody wants to get one of those devices, what do they have to do to get it?
Oh, devices. They can buy them online. There are some the device. Let's talk about the devices. So this way the people know what they are. There is a refractometer, which to measure the total carbohydrates in the blood, in the urine. I'm sorry. So our take on sugar is not the same. Allopathic medicine looks at the glucose. We look at the entire carbohydrates. So sometimes, by our standards, someone is considered diabetic, whereas by our standards, he may not be diabetic. Whereas sometimes it's considered not diabetic, but by our standards, it's considered diabetic. Because glucose is just a component of the total carbohydrates.
Right.
So, but someone has to know. I mean, it's useless to buy the instrument and not knowing the science, because is the power is in the interpretation of. So it doesn't work like a blood pressure meter or a temperature meter or something. You just have to read off the screen. It doesn't work like. You have to know to interpret the numbers. But I can tell you what these instruments are. They're fairly simple. They're pH meter, they're conductivity meter, and there's some other that require some chemistry. There is I forgot what is. One is to measure nitrogen. One is to measure the ammoniacal nitrogen. A combination of ammoniacal nitrogen and nitrogen in the urine. That's what we call the urea. So, like I said, the instrumentation by itself just costs probably between $200 to $1,000, depends what kind of quality you want to buy. But the most important is the interpretation. Do you know or you don't know how to interpret? I mean, you can, for example, buy and test yourself, and then call someone who can interpret that for you, and that could be one way to go.
Well, awesome. Yeah, I got a glucose meter. And I'm supposed to check my sugar every day, but I don't. But I do monitor it. I know when I start start feeling it kind of dropping and that kind of thing. And of course, I keep sweets around just in case. But it's very, very important. At least get to the doctor and get those tests done, because you never know. Do it on a regular basis. I mean, I have to go every 3 months because I have a lot of different problems, and they have to constantly check my liver and things like that. And even these medications. I mean, I take metformin every day, and even though it's good for taking care of my glucose and everything, I understand that use this too much, it can affect your brain. And then if you use the insulin, that can end up affecting your kidneys. So, which is the lesser of the two evils? The best thing to do is get a hold of it ahead of time, so you don't have to get on these medications. And take care of yourself.
Yeah,
so that's my message. I'm on my rant right now.
There was, I remember the best when I was into. I mean, when someone consults with us, we give them some supplements, which are vitamins, minerals, and enzymes. But I remember my associate, the one who passed away, he used to tell me, Zach, remember the secret is in a diet. So I tell, this is what I tell. So we have a tendency to think that the power is in the pill. The power, he was telling me, Zach, the secret is in a diet. So it makes us sometimes feel good to shop for whatever it is, but if you understand a diet, you don't need those pills. You can do as well.
Well, Zach, we have come to the end of the show, my friend.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on, and I look forward to talking to you more in the future. And you're just a city away, so.
Just remember, between a rock and a weird place.
That's right. Well, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate everybody that checks us out and listens to the show or watches us on YouTube. Your support means everything to us, and I really love having people like Zach come on, and we get to learn something new that we didn't realize.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it. Until the next one.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favourite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network and on Instagram at The Vibes Broadcast.